Here with quarterbacks coach Dan Morrison, and as you begin spring, it's a little bit different because the guys you're working with are very young. Last year, Steve Kaiser was coming off a season when he'd been sick and missed most of the year. This is the first off season for Connor Preston and Garrett Christich. How different is it from your perspective as a teacher with these guys all being so young? Do you feel like you're starting from scratch?
Not too bad, actually, because they were real good last year, paying real close attention in the meetings. There isn't much of a drop-off right now. We haven't slowed down the pace at all. We haven't slowed down the package at all. So they're being thrown everything, and they're handling it very well right now. I mean, I'm very impressed how well they are handling it. There are very few mental mistakes out there to this point. Now, we're just putting it in right now. But right now, I would say we're much better than I thought we would be at this point with the young kids.
Last year, again, Steve was coming off the year where he'd been sick and missed most of the season. And Connor, I'm told, spends as much time in the weight room as any quarterback anybody's ever seen. Just from a physical standpoint, how different are those two guys from a year ago at this time?
Well, they're both physically stronger. They're both bigger and stronger. The ball comes out better. I think the big thing with quarterbacks at this point right now is just their legs, and they're like, we throw as much as we throw, and towards the end of practice, it's like pitchers in the 8th inning. Their legs are the ones that really start to go. So we're really trying to emphasize the leg strength, the leg endurance, because if they can do that, then that'll eliminate some of the arm problems. It's when their legs tire and they start throwing just their arm that they start getting shoulder problems and elbow problems. So right now my focus has been on their legs and making sure their legs are strong enough to carry them through the 2-hour practice. And thus far they've been pretty good with that.
Ever since you and your staff have been here, whether it's spring ball or two-a-days or during the season, you almost always have 4 quarterbacks throwing on every single play. Now you've only got 3 arms out there. How much does that change the workload, and how much do you have to back off to keep from really sort of throwing their arms off?
Well, we haven't had to back off at all because Coach Phillips jumped in there and he's been throwing with the best of them. He's been our 4th quarterback, so he's been slinging it and doing a great job. So we have 4 arms throwing most of the time. But even if not, we've had situations in the past because of injuries or illnesses or whatever where you've been down a quarterback or 2. So we knew we were going in with 3 this spring, and it really doesn't change a lot of things. We just kind of keep throwing it as soon as the last man standing. So we try not to adjust too much just because of that. But as I say, Coach Phillips has jumped in, and he's been the star quarterback for us with the big arm.
Obviously, you don't have the full complement of quarterbacks now that you're going to have in August, but how much can these guys do in terms of sort of staking a claim toward earning that job in August by being here this spring, or is it everyone starting at ground zero when the full army arrives?
Well, it's always hard to say everybody's starting at ground zero when the reality is that a couple of them have been throwing thousands of footballs and have thrown the offense. So the biggest thing right now is not really necessarily looking for a pecking order of quarterbacks. It's trying to get each one of them to get better and better and better so that the group becomes better. And then come August, we'll bring the 2 other young men in, and they're going to start throwing right away. But, they'll get the time in the film room when they get here, and they'll be okay as well. They're both really bright kids, and they'll jump into it quickly as well. So very pleased with where these guys are right now.
A lot of coaches talk about the spring being the time to do individual instruction. Are you doing any mechanical or technique changes with Connor and Steve? Or is this really more better understanding the offense and polishing up their ability to read defenses and that kind of thing?
You're always tweaking them as quarterbacks, particularly as you're doing what we're doing right now. Because when you throw for 2 hours, and you really, truly, we're throwing almost the whole 2 hours, their technique will begin to disintegrate a little bit as they tire. So you're constantly towards, from the middle on, you're really pushing to make sure that you're reminding them to, discipline their legs, discipline their arms. Don't start throwing just your arm. Your arm's starting to drop a little bit, and your body's starting to get out of sync. So you're constantly talking to them about making sure they stay technically sound. Beginning of practice, there usually are. Those are reminders. But we'll always be tweaking techniques, not in a big sense, but just reminders as their body starts to tire a little bit.
You always hear people say a quarterback can only be as good as his offensive line in front of him. You lose 5 senior starters from last year's team. How will the development of the quarterbacks be affected by the fact that you're getting all these new faces lining up in front of them?
Well, I think I think they're actually doing very well too, from what I understand. We haven't been together yet. I think they're going to be very good. We have to kind of, almost disregard that and get more into our steps, our throws, get the ball out quickly. It wouldn't matter if you had a veteran offensive line or not. Our whole emphasis is 1, 2, 3 and out, 1, 2, 3 and out, 1, 2, 3 and out, and knowing where their eyes go, making fast decisions, making good decisions. And it is not as determined by who's in front of them as it is we got to take care of ourselves, and that's our focus right now, is just making sure we're sound and we're getting the ball out quickly and we're getting it out on time. So it's our focus right now, and we won't worry too much about how those guys are doing. I'm sure they'll be very good.